All right. Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net and pick up physical copies of my comics. All right. So I see we've already got some folks in the chat. It's nice to see some early birds already. We see Cody Cat in the chat. Hurrah. And Byron here. Hey. Good to see you, Byron. Thanks for joining me. It's good to be back. I've been off for a couple of weeks, had some stuff I had to take care of. But it's good to get in here and doing some creative work. All right. So what do we have on the docket for today? Well, first off, the piece that I had, hang on, let me just adjust stuff on my desk, get the mic a little bit closer so I can be a little bit quieter, don't have to yell as much. There we go. Find a good place to put my books. I always feel like I'm kind of shuffling stuff around as I'm doing these live streams, kind of like figuring out, right, I'm going to put this here and then. Welcome, Katie Cat. Katie says, welcome, and it is good to be back. So let me bring up my screen here. So the cat, the kitty up piece that I was working on, I really feel like this one is pretty much done. I mean, there's stuff I could probably do to push the illustration further. But for the most part, this feels pretty wrapped up to me. The only thing that I'm trying to decide is what color to make the background. Let me get my my little drawing glove on. And honestly, I didn't get around to doing this, but I meant to pull up. I mean, I like to share like kind of all the weird details and how I figure out and do things. And to be honest, what I was planning on doing was just looking at some home decor websites and pulling up some reference and choosing the background color for the overall piece based on like home decor colors, trying to find something that looked like that dark blue gray doesn't look bad. Point being is that I wanted to just sort of look and try to find something that fit in tonally with home decor coloring. But I want to see what happens for a start if I just sample some colors directly from the. Now that is interesting. It doesn't seem to be letting me sample right here. But I wanted to see what it would be like if I started with a color that was already in the composition and then just tinted it off of that. So let's see here. So Katie says, I'd make the push the purple hues more in the skies. That'll complement the oranges and yellows nicely. Well, you know what? I think that's an interesting suggestion. But one of the things I'm playing with here is I actually want to have this. Once I get past the colors, I feel like there's different levels of intensity in terms of the colors. So I've got, before it was white, hang on, I got to go to the background again. So before it was white, and the way I have this, the most intense color, even though it's, browns, browns these two browns are basically oranges and yellows. The boots and and the pants. You know what? I just realized I forgot to paint her belt in. I got to go and do that. But point being is that for the most part, those are the warmest colors, and those are the colors that even though they are muted and darker, those are the colors that really pop. So when you look at the background, yes, there's purples and there's the blues of the skies and there's greens in the grass. They're all super muted. And what I was thinking was to go even more muted as we go deeper into the background. So if I were to go with a purple, the real question is, do I want to go with a bright, vivid purple that jumps out at you? Or do I want to go with something that is very, very muted and also not just muted, but muted and pale, like almost a pastel color? And that is sort of the question I'm playing with. And this is where that thing I mentioned about home decor comes into, is really trying to say, well, what is sort of a neutral color that would stand out on someone's wall, and make this kind of an appealing piece of home decor. That's really what I'm thinking. So Katie also mentions a muted indigo color. Well, before I forget, let me go in and finish painting that belt. And even the belt, I had trouble trying to decide whether I wanted to go with a dark brown belt or a black belt. Um, or even going with a lighter colored belt, that matches the colors of the glove and the boots. So let's see. Let's zoom in here. And I learned something that it's because of how old my tablet is, but I'm really kind of pushing the maximum number of layers for the size of the size of the tablet I'm working on. And I probably really should work, instead of working at, right now this piece is 600 DPI at 11 by 14, and what I should probably do is work at, because 11 by 14 is the size that I want, but I should probably work at maybe 450 DPI. So not quite 300, a little bit above, just in case, I need some extra scale, some extra size for scaling, enlarging it for, I don't know, other formats, other sizes. Just give me a little cushion in terms of in terms of resolution. Katie says, "Sorry, I just woke up. My keyboard is having a war with me." I get that. Sometimes we go in there and our fingers are like mushy, mushy mushrooms just slamming into it, and nothing wants to work, come out right. All right. And then just paint in the belt loops. Go a little bit smaller here so I have a little bit more control. And all I'm trying to do, believe it or not, it's just I want to place the belt loop someplace where it's not going to create a tangent. Because if my instinct would be to put the belt loop right here, but that immediately creates a tangent between the torso and the vest. So I'm actually pushing it a little bit further over than I would normally place it, with the express purpose of trying to avoid tangents, which I think I'd said this. It was funny. My buddy Alejandro, one time I had posted it on, I think on either a blog post or on the Patreon, but I had said, killing tangents is a full-time job. And I really do feel like that is often, like, I don't want to say 90% of the task of illustrating, But it seems like a big chunk of the task is just going through and saying, "Oh, I made a tangent here, made a tangent there." And every time you fix one tangent, you create another. And it's just a matter of moving around until you get a piece that is balanced, aesthetically pleasing, and you've like eliminated as many tangents as possible. And I say as many as possible because sometimes you eliminate a tangent and you just move the composition to a place where it's just not interesting anymore. And it's like you have to choose. Do I want to have a piece that is interesting or do I want to have a piece that that has zero tangents? And I think the professional in me says, well, you should be able to make a piece that just has no tangents, period. That's what being a professional is. Um, but no piece is perfect. And I can see a world where you make something and you're like, all right, I've eliminated all the tangents. I've sanitized this piece as much as I can. And in that sanitation, you've got something that you've destroyed all the magic. And I think I'd rather have magic in my piece. All right. Let's just say the belt buckle is some kind of silvery silver. Let's start with the color. Like at a certain point, I just start reusing colors from other places in the composition. So I just, went through and picked a color from the sky, but this color that I picked is too bright. So I really want to gray it down and desaturate. I want to darken and desaturate. So more like a neutral. And what's weird is I thought I would have to do it, move it a lot further down. But what I just did right here, if you can see my little color picker, like just moving it a tiny bit, that feels like plenty. Because I don't want to go too dark. I kind of want to make it dark enough that it's darker than the gray in that's kind of accenting her fur, but not so dark that it jumps out at you. I kind of wanted to make it like a little bit of a what? And I don't know why, but I feel like I want to round the corners of this thing a little bit more. The magic of undo. Let's see here. So Byron says, like many rules, it's more of a guideline. Only only true rule is if it looks good, it is good. Yes, both Katie Cat and I both agree. And hey, Dylan's in the chat. Hey Dylan, how you doing? Hope you're having a good weekend. Thanks for popping in. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's true. I try not to be too didactic. Well, that's a lie. I think I create a ton of mental rules for myself. And then I think I honestly create mental rules to see how I can creatively not break the rule, but subvert it. How to take a certain rule and say, all right, I am going to do the piece within the constraints of that rule, but I'm going to try and find every workaround possible. If anything, I think rules serve two purposes, which I don't know if you would, I think you would probably agree with this, Byron, that the rules initially they serve the purpose of teaching you fundamentals. Just this is how the picture making process works. But then once you get a handle on that, then they serve as a challenge in terms of finding interesting ways to subvert those rules. So subverting sometimes is because breaking a rule is something where you just look at it, you're like, you know what? This piece is unconventional. It's different and it looks better because I don't follow those rules. And I think that you definitely get pieces like that. But I think what I encounter more often is subverting the rules, where I look at it and I do something with it, where someone looks at it and at first they're like, I see what you did. You followed the rule, but you used it in a really weird way. And, that's, I'm talking to myself out loud, talking to you guys. Um, I feel like that seems to be the more interesting approach with rules, is that it's more about, rather than just full on breaking them, taking them and doing something weird with them, where you look at it and you're almost like, it's more sort of like when you first look at it, it looks like you didn't follow the rule at all. And then when you take a closer look and examine it, you're like, oh, this is a really interesting execution of that idea or that concept. Um, I would say kind of like if you look at movies, a lot of people say don't outline, don't overthink your piece, just write your story. Screenwriting formulas make no sense. And they're all bullshit and they're all made up. Whereas some writers will look and say, everything has a 3-act structure, um, and they follow screenwriting rules religiously. And in the end, I think with a lot of pieces or a lot of films, you can look at it and you can look at a film that is completely unconventional. You can look at something like a Quentin Tarantino script, which feels very much extremely unconventional. And you can look at it and say, "Oh, wait, but he followed." If you look at it from like a Robert McKee or a Sid Field story structure thing, you're like, "Well, it does actually follow all these things. It just doesn't feel like it does." I think that you can look at that and see like the most innovative looking films. If you look at them, if you're looking for a structure, you can find them, and you can plug them into these formulas if you're trying to force it into that. And I think that's kind of the same thing with art rules, that you can find frames and structures with you if you were looking for it, but not necessarily. Let's see here. So Dylan mentions, I just watched Jazz's video on the rise and fall of Adobe. It's an interesting video. Do you use Adobe? Yes, I do. However, a long time ago, I switched. Basically, I did not want to get an Adobe subscription when they switched to the full on the Creative Cloud thing where you had to have a subscription to use it. And I signed up for the Affinity Suite, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher. And I like those programs and I use those programs for my personal work. However, earlier this year, I went from being an in house designer to a freelance designer. And while Affinity Photo is capable of producing finished work for that you could deliver to, pardon me, to clients, it's more sort of like if you were going to give the finished, giving the client a finished, either like a layered PSD or a or or just TIFFs or whatever, just a high res final file. You can totally do that with Affinity Photo. However, for the work that I tend to do, I need to hand off files that other people can then later manipulate, which means I needed the additional compatibility of Adobe. So I have gone, and for work reasons, I signed up for the Creative Cloud. So yeah, I do have that and I use it, but still for my personal work, I stick with Affinity Photo. I like it. I prefer it. It's a pretty simple, straightforward platform. They recently got purchased by Canva, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Cory Doctorow concept of enshittification. I stumbled over that, enshittification. I think that's the first time I've actually said the word out loud, even though I've heard it on many a podcast. But it's simply the idea that a platform starts off super awesome, everyone loves it, and then at a certain point, it begins to shift from something that is incredibly useful to something that really just serves, I don't know, either advertisers, or it becomes something that is not as useful for the customer. And I'm not saying that that is what is currently happening, but as soon as a company that you've been working or you're using their software for a while gets purchased by another company, it immediately we've seen enough times in the history of software development that tends to be sort of the first canary in the coal mine that this may change from something that I love and am using all the time to something I don't love. So we shall see how things go with Affinity Photo. I have not watched that Jazza video, but I think he's got a lot of interesting views and feedback. I maybe will make some time later this weekend to check that video out and see what his thoughts are. Um, but yeah, I mean, I remember I started using Photoshop not when it was Photoshop Creative Cloud 3, not when it was Photoshop CS3. I started using Photoshop when I was in college. It was Photoshop 3, and I think Photoshop 4 was just being released. That's how old I am. Um, let's see here. Dylan also mentions, I'm good. I'm doing good. I've been drawing out here and there for the past week and a half. Always good to be getting some miles in there, doing some studies. Let's see here. Oops, I skipped over. Byron says, "Oh yeah, absolutely. This is back to the conversation about rules. Rules are the foundation of how we build our creative houses. Ignoring the rules completely usually just leads to plain bad art." Yes, he says, but playing with the rules is where the magic happens. I completely agree. Let's see here. Dylan says, "I've been watching a lot of cartoonist kayfabe this week. You know that I'm glad that they kept they're keeping the archive up because they have a lot of amazing both videos and just historical analysis of the comics industry. And I think it's a great resource, and hopefully it will still be around. You know, yeah, it's a whole sad topic, but let's see here. Yes, Byron says, "Rest in peace, Eddie." Yes, rest in peace, Eddie. Let's see here. Dylan says, kind of like Comixology. I've never used them, but in a video about how bad it's been since Amazon purchased it. It's interesting. I did use Comixology. They had Comixology. I think they either call it Comixology Submit or Comixology Direct, but it was they originally had it set up so that creators could just go in there and set up their own tabs and just create whatever indie comics they have and put their digital comics on sale on the platform. And I felt like that was an amazing resource. And I guess now that it's all KDP, Kindle Publishing Direct, um I haven't even submitted a single issue comic since they've transformed into that. I've only put trades up on Amazon, so we'll have to see. I mean, one of the things I've also been meaning to do for a while now is get my digital comics on Kobo, not Kobo, but just get them available on like non-Amazon ebook retailers. So the problem is I've looked at it and places like Draft to Digital and Kobo don't necessarily have as good of support for comics, or at least they don't have clear formatting guidelines for comic books the way that Amazon, yes, for all of the problems that they might have, they do have a digital comic creator built in. Um Personally, I find that creating that guided view is a lot of extra work for me that I don't feel like doing. And when I read comics digitally, I'm not reading them on my phone. So it might be that I'm biased and I'm not paying attention to what the audience really wants. But I personally prefer reading on my tablet, and I'll just read full screen. My tablet's large, and that's where, really being biased. Not everyone necessarily has a large screen tablet. and I'll just read the comics, full page, and it's a little bit larger than a traditional comic book page. And I definitely prefer reading my comics like that versus the guided view. All right. Put a little bit of shade over here. It's interesting because now I'm just playing with little areas of warm versus cool because they're both browns, but one is a warmer brown, one's a cooler brown. Yeah, I think that works. So Dylan says, I have thought of using KDP for my comics, but I'm still unsure. Well, I think there's a lot of things to take into account. um, Currently, I use KDP for my trades, but going forward, I feel like I'm gonna have to. I want to have all of my comic books available so that people can buy direct from my website digitally, buy from Barnes and Noble, Kobo, all the different ebook retailers, and also be able to order print on demand copies. There's a couple of companies that will do fulfillment. Ingram is the one that I was thinking of. I can't remember whether it's Lightning Source and Ingram Spark are the same company, but one of them is based more in Europe. And I can't remember which one is the one that I've been looking at. I think it was just Ingram, but I want to set up my books there so that people can order directly and have Ingram fulfill the print orders. And that is only for the purpose that the actual packing and shipping of books is something that I would have no problem doing if making comics and artwork were my full-time job. And that's all I did was I got up, I drew every day, I go, I check my orders, I pack what orders I have, drop those off at the post office, or maybe, twice a week I make it run to the post office to drop packages off. I would be more than happy to do that. But with my day job, running around and staying on top of orders is just more than I really have the bandwidth for. And that's the reason why I prefer having a service that's doing it. Um, I need to figure out how to set it up so that I launch a book. And when you have stuff on KDP, the ebooks are supposed to be Amazon exclusive for like, I think it's 90 days, and then they go wide. But I also don't understand how it is that I am certain that major publishers, like if a Stephen King launches a new book, I am certain that the ebook is not only available on Amazon for 90 days. So there has got to be some sort of loophole, or maybe it's just something where the larger publishers are like, no, we're not. They just told Amazon, no, you either take it and it's going to be wide or you don't get it. Um, and they're probably able to parlay that into any other authors they have, and they're like, look, you either allow us to have our books launch on all platforms at the same time, or you don't get our major authors. And so it could just be the whole thing about having to be exclusive for 90 days is something that they're just doing to indie authors. And maybe because indie authors don't have the clout as a whole to do that, we end up with these crappy rules. I would say that if my book is black and white, and part of that choosing to do it black and white is that it helps keep the printing costs down, and which allows me to keep the retail price somewhat reasonable. So if you're doing a black and white book on KDP, they actually, because of the volume they do, I will say that that's one of the advantages of working with a company that is so large, is that the unit price for my books on Amazon, I'm able to keep that, relatively reasonable because the individual price of a printed book that's print on demand from Amazon that's black and white is pretty affordable. So they have a print calculator on there. It's worth getting on there. You don't have to have an account. You can just go to Amazon. If you just Google Amazon print calculator, you'll get a page where it can tell you you can pick how many pages your book is going to be, the trim size, meaning the actual book size. You can put all that information in, the type of book cover you want, whether it's black and white and color, and it'll tell you how much an individual book will cost to produce from Amazon. So I recommend getting in there and playing with that. Um, Beyond that, I can't say that Amazon has treated me poorly as an indie author. I just know that a lot of indie authors, I listen to a lot of podcasts with indie authors, and they really do chafe at the amount of control and restrictions that Amazon has. And I feel like the reason why I'm not chafing is simply because I am not selling at the volume that some of these indie creators are. And when you do get to the point where your livelihood, your main income is coming from books, you really, I think, dial in and notice a lot more of things where you're like, this is just unfair and I'm getting screwed. And I'm just not at that point yet. So use with caution is what I say. There's never going to be a right time to dive in. I say if you've got a comic you're working on and you want to just give it a shot in terms of putting some stuff up on Amazon. Yeah, the thing you have to remember is you can always take these books down. No decision that you make about publishing has to be permanent. As long as you read contracts, you don't enter into an agreement with a publisher where you give them rights in perpetuity. That's something you always want to look out for in a contract is the words in perpetuity, because that's someone saying, whatever you're allowing me to do, you're going to allow me to do forever. And you do not want to allow anyone to do anything with your work forever. You know what? I'm getting caught up in trying to clean up the background clouds here, and I honestly need to just stop and leave it alone because I'm putting in details that are unnecessary. All right, I'm gonna try and leave that alone, and let me go back to the whoa! Stylus made a run for it. Let's see here. All right. A few different comments while I was on my rant and ramble. Let me scroll back up and I will get to everybody. All right. Let's see here. Dylan says, I found some comics that are new to me that I want to get, which are Rumble, Ultra Mega, same creator as Rumble, The Twilight Children, and Hero Man, which is a manga with Stan Lee. I have heard of Ultra Mega, and it looks cool. I forget who the creator is. I want to really get caught up on a ton of comics. I have a bunch of stuff laying around that I want to read. I will tell you on my one of my recent blog posts, I'll probably put it, and I put it in my last month's newsletter, is Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. So I had Gary Hodges on my stream a few months back, and he's got a great series called it's DVSM, which is Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. And I finally got around to actually buying his books, and there's 3 issues, and these are like oversized issues. I think they're like 48, 50 pages each. And I posted a review of issue 1, but in the time since I posted a review of issue 1, I've read 2 and 3, and it just gets better from there. Like, it really is one of the art is great, but I'm really blown away by the level of the writing. Like, it's one of those where I am genuinely envious as a comic creator of how well written it is. And I'm going to write reviews of the other 2 issues as well, but that's a good one. And you can only get those directly from Gary's website on Etsy. If you were to just Google Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, you'll find that on there. Another book that I have not started yet, but has been on my list for a while. Oh, I had mentioned my buddy Alejandro Lee, and he has a web comic he's been doing called Sally Sprocket and Piston Pete. And I picked up a copy of his trade at WonderCon last year, and I have had it. I have not had time to sit down and read it, so I specifically pulled it out and was like, I need to put this at the top of my to read pile. Ugh. So those are kind of the things that are around right now, comic wise. But in terms of, I've been trying to actually spend more time reading prose because when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, there's something about reading the printed word as opposed to looking at pictures and words that it's kind of like it stimulates the dreaming part of my brain. It helps me relax and unwind. So I've been reading some prose stuff, but that's another thing that I do in my newsletter and also on Patreon is I write reviews of what I'm reading and what I'm watching. Like I say that in the intro. Like if you want to see what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, that's what I write about. It's just the stuff that I'm taking in and just what I think of it. Simple, just book reports and who I think might be interested in it. So let's see here. I'm going to stop drawing for a little bit so I can actually pay attention. Like I said, the last half of the stream always ends up being a talk show. Um, let's see here. And Timon, I see your comment. I'm getting to you next. So Dylan says, I was thinking of doing an anthology series at some point on the game Crafter and their digest size, which is 200 pages max. But if the story goes over 200, I would possibly go over KDP. Let's see here. And Dylan says KDP's digest size is like 500 pages plus. Yeah, that's I will tell you that KDP is cheaper for print size books. It's cheaper than Ingram. If you're to Ingram Spark is what you want to look for. The difference is that Ingram is more expensive, so you're not going to make as much profit per book. I think they don't take as big of a royalty, or they may not even take a royalty at all. But whatever it is, it's a smaller percentage than what you take from Amazon, and it allows you to distribute it on multiple platforms, and you can get your books into libraries. That's the big thing. I have not spent enough time doing that. My books, as far as I know, are not in any libraries, and I want to change that. That's my big impetus for getting my books on Ingram. So Timon asks, hey Jeremy, I was wondering how you approach color when making an illustration. That is a very good question, and I can probably show you with this piece. Oh, and by the way, I see James, just so you know, because now we're about to go into a long ass ramble. So I want to just say what's up to you, because good to see you as always. Going into my process for a color illustration. Well, let's see here. One, I do not consider color my strong suit. I consider it something that it's one of my weaknesses. And I feel like each time I do a color piece, that's a reason for me to get in, to practice, to work and improve. Let's see here. I'm still not happy with this background color, but we'll come back to that. Let me go back to my gallery. And I want to see if I have the thumbnail for this piece. Let's see here. So my process when it comes to color, so here, I can flip this back. Yeah, originally I had it like this. Now I'm trying to see if I had multiple color thumbnails that I did, or whether I just did the one. So the reason why I bring up being bad at color is because my normal approach, I really feel like there was, let me just go back and look one more time, because I feel like there was another sheet where I did multiple color thumbnails for this piece before starting it. No, it looks like that's it. But my approach is to start with black and white. And to be honest, my approach is to start with value. So it's me deciding what's going to be the dark areas and light areas. And let me turn off some of these other layers. So I can kind of walk you through what I started with was I had the idea for this piece, and I started with just doing a bunch of little sketches, you know. And so I honestly I don't really think about color until I have a visual, like a line art composition that I'm happy with. And I went from sort of an upright standing pose to an angled pose and then deciding I was going to compose her within a circle. And I realized I was going to have a little mouse in the foreground in a saddle. I forgot the mouse. You know what? Life goes on. I can always throw the mouse in there someday if I really want it, if I really decide I need it. But anyway, this was me just working out the black and white composition. Now, once I had this image and I was fairly happy with it, that's when I went and created, turn this layer off. Oh, here we go. So this tiny little thumbnail here is me just going and just sketching. In fact, hang on, did I do an even larger one? No, it's about the same size. All I tried to do was replicate that silhouette and start with something. As you can see, these are basically the colors that are in the final piece. And all it is just, I knew I wanted to have, if I turn my reference layer back on, I was really kind of looking at this Gil Elfgren piece. And that's another thing I do. I will look at other illustrators and I'll look at the color compositions that they use. And I'll find a color composition that's in the same theme that I have. And the similarity is that mine is more saturated because it's more cartoony, but you can see that it's just simple blue sky and pale dusty earth, kind of a brownish yellowish kind of ochre. So all I do is the same way that I thumbnail. That's what it really comes down to for me. My process of approaching color is that I will do black and white thumbnails to work out the composition. I do color thumbnails to work out the color. And I happened to like the first one I did, and I said, all right, I'll go with this. But for instance, I think I've got another one in here. Let's see, I've got a lot of like random illustrations in this folder. I mean, here's a good example. This is a piece where the actual finished pieces I did the one that you're looking at here is probably the main one, but I couldn't decide, and I ended up doing the green one, the red one, and the blue one. So the final prints of these are all available. It's available in 3 different colors. But this is one where I did all of the line work and then I just did a bunch of color studies. So you can take a very rough thumbnail. It doesn't have to be, this is like a pretty finished line drawing that I then went around and did different color schemes on. I generally will do this thumbnail stage where I do the multiple color studies. I will do that. Let me go back out here. This is a good example. Like this is another one of my Medusa series, and this is sort of a Medusa, and she's sort of sleeping with a lover who's turned to stone. And after I did this black and white sketch, I did these very, very rough color comps. There's one where mostly everything is black and white, and you just get her skin tone and her snakes. I've got one where everything is colored by candlelight, colored by moonlight. I'm not even sure what I was trying to do with these abstract ones here. This is just me playing with just playing with color. That is how I approach color. It is the exact same process as the thumbnail process for black and white lineup for composition. I just look at the composition and I try colors. That's it. Usually it helps to start with a background color. Usually I will start with a background color and try. I either will have an idea of what I want the background to be and then have that inform how I color the figure, or I will have an idea of how I want the figure colored and then I will color the background around to complement them. One of the two. But it honestly is just back and forth and playing with colors. A lot of times, the most important thing is just having a starting point. Doesn't matter what. Decide, do we want to have a warm piece or a cool piece? Um, Now, all of this again comes after value. Value is something I like to work out in black and white in the thumbnails. Value meaning, is it a low key piece, mostly dark colors with a little bit of light? Is it a high key piece, mostly light with a little bit of shadow? Pieces that are right in the middle can be very effective, but I just feel like it's a matter of being more advanced. It's more nuanced. You really, if you're doing something that's not high key or low key, you really have to be thoughtful about what it is that you want to emphasize and how you use contrast. So it's a more challenging thing to do. But first is your actual black and white composition, then it's your values, then color. And all of it comes down to thumbnails for me. Thumbnails are my gateway to making art. It's just that's how I it's not that I make decisions, it's that I just thumbnail out ideas and see which ones work. So let's see here. Um, Let me scroll back up. And okay, let me go back up to James. And James says, crappy rules, yes. Adobe doesn't let you have Photoshop installed on more than 2 computers. I didn't get a chance to deactivate CS6 from my laptop after having it installed on there twice, as I was having issues with it. Oh well, at least I know Krita well enough to be able to use it. I have never used Krita. I've heard good things about it. I know lots of people that love it. There's a website called Photopia, and it is a browser-based version of Photoshop. I have used it. I've recommended it to other people. I don't know if it could handle large print files. It definitely seems like it's great for something that's going to be a web. I mean, obviously, if you're doing a web comic, you're going to plan for it being in print. So I wouldn't advise that. I've not tested how well it could do with like a 600 DPI 8.5 by 11 piece, but that's another option. And like I said, I use the Affinity Suite. I have been very happy with them. Now, here's the thing: the Affinity Suite cannot do everything that the Adobe Suite can. It can do most of the things that it does, and the real difference is that there's certain keystrokes. The way that I've learned to use Adobe products, I've figured out the keystrokes for the things I need to do, and I have those memorized, so I don't have to think about it, and I can work effectively that way. Having to learn and memorize a whole new set of keystrokes. I mean, obviously cut and paste and new layer and stuff like that. Those are kind of universal, but there are a lot of things that the keystrokes are slightly different, or you have to program new keystrokes in for Affinity. So it's not a one-to-one, but it is both cheaper and there's no subscription. And I feel like what it makes up, what it lacks in terms of the universality of the Adobe Suite is reasonable for the quality of software you're getting. It is definitely professional quality software. It's just there's some certain features that Adobe has that I've gotten really used to and accustomed to that Affinity doesn't quite have, but it's okay. I've definitely been able to make it work for my personal stuff. And if I haven't, if there's something, like I said, I have it now. That's the thing. I have both versions now on my work computer. And I use Adobe Suite for my day job work, and I use Affinity for personal work. And for drawing and painting, I use neither. I mostly draw in Procreate. I keep seeing people doing great stuff in Manga Studio, and I keep saying I should probably just try it because everyone gets raves about who uses it. I had the desktop version for a while and I didn't care for it, but I've never used it on the iPad, so we'll have to see. James also asks, is this a new piece? I remember you were working on that cat a few weeks that cat piece a few weeks back. Well, this one is I can't remember if I was flipping around and showing the other stuff and talking about color when you I think I wasn't talking about color when you came in. No, this is just where the cat piece has evolved to. And at this point it is pretty much done. I just need to decide what color I want the background to be. And I've been playing with that. I don't know. That might I just need to decide, do I want to go darker? Because my instinct says go lighter. Kind of a light, pale, sandy kind of color. That might be it. Just a little tan, nice tan little color there. That might be it. What happens if I go more saturated? Yeah, I'm thinking that this might be it. See if I go really saturated. Nope, that's too much. I mean, I will tell you that I pay a lot more attention now. That's another thing about colors. I pay a lot more attention to temperature now than I used to. Um, when I'm shifting colors, honestly, I much less shift like hues like directly, like in terms of going from a red to a blue, and I'll just be using a blue color, and I'll be like, let me push this blue a slightly greener, go and warm it up, and let me push it slightly towards violet and cool it off. So I'm thinking a lot more in terms of, do I want to heat this up or cool it off, and then do I want it to be more saturated or less saturated? I do that a lot more than a full on like color change. Let's see here. Katie says that's actually some solid advice. I've rambled so much that unless it was the advice about color, rules and just whoops, deciding, using them as guidelines. I can't remember what it was. I've rambled. You know how it is. We get going, and I get caught up, and then I come back to the chat. And I'm like, I don't remember what I said. You guys are replying to stuff I said 20 minutes ago. And blah 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 blah. Oh, I missed this. Let's see here. So whoops. Again with this stuff going on and off. So Byron says, I wish America has as much of a robust small printing scene as Japan does. The Dojin scene is basically an entire sector of a business itself. Well, I mean, I agree. First off, I completely agree. Secondly, I feel like, that's interesting. Somehow I can give yourself, I don't know what it shows up on your end, but I can give people's comments a little star. I don't know what that does, but all I know is I just hit it like, oh, it's a nice comment. Um, I feel like in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were a lot more small printers. And I can even remember, like, when I was doing the convention scene, when I published my first graphic novel, that there were a lot of small printers jockeying for indie comic creators' work. And I still see there's like a place called Global PSD, I think. Um, on any given comic convention that I've done, at least in California, and also I've seen them in like when I've done shows in Phoenix or in Nevada and Las Vegas, there's usually at least one or two local printers that are like there's Ready Comics there, and I still, I haven't used them in a while, but there's what are they called? Robinson, RA Comics Direct, their place, and then there's the ones that I've used for my single issues, Greco Printing. They are great. I love them. Well, they're Wellspring Comics, and I think Greco Printing, it might be the name of their actual print shop that's in Michigan. But no, my larger point is not to disagree with you, Byron. It's that I agree with you in that there was a time in the early 2000s where I feel like there were so many indie printers, and I feel like there are still indie printers out there now. I feel like the twists and turns of the economy and the difficulty of maintaining a small business has definitely taken a bite out of the number of those there. I think that it's still, I mean, for as much as I mentioned wanting to get my stuff on Ingram and the fact that I've been using Amazon for fulfillment, I still feel like, at least for single issues, there's a lot of printers that I want. I don't want those printers to go away. It's a matter of me making decisions that are, what's economically viable for me, and the ability to have a place to fulfill my individual orders is very valuable. That said, when it comes to producing single issues of comics, I still feel like there's a lot of great printers out there. It's worth going, seeking them out, finding a place that can do books for you. I know I'm trying to remember the name of them, but when I listen to the Comics Launch podcast with Tyler James, he has there's a printer, and I don't know why I'm blanking. I'm blanking because I need the information. My brain says, well, you can't have it just because you want it. But there's a really good printer that they use, that the Comics Tribe, his company uses, and that they're a sponsor on his podcast. And they do a lot of Kickstarter fulfillment in addition to just being a printer. Oh, I feel crappy that I can't remember their name right now, but it'll come to me as soon as the stream is over. Let's see here. Dylan says the creator of Rumble and Ultra Mega said that Ultra Mega 5 is getting a second printing. That's good to know. Worth checking out there. Let's see here. And James says, as far as comics go, I thought Meteor Men was pretty good. I'm reading Outpost Zero at the moment. Now, I've never heard of Outpost Zero. Let me write that down let me find a pen here. Take a look at that. Now, when you say Meteor Men, I presume that's not the movie. That's the Robert Townsend superhero movie, but just a regular comic. Let's see here. And Dylan gave some love for Gary's Dinosaurs versus Mars bot, and mentions, "Are you on Substack? If so, I will follow you." I am on Substack, but I have not started publishing on Substack. I mean, I have an account mainly because I'm following other creators on Substack. And that said, I've thought about running my newsletter parallel, both as I currently run it through MailChimp, but then also creating it on Substack just to see if there's any growth or whether it's worth me moving over to that platform. Because I've heard a lot of good things from people on there. Let's see here. James says, have you seen the series Haunted with Matthew Fox? It's a blend of horror and noir. You might like it. It is one that I have not watched, but I'm very familiar with it because I like Matthew Fox. I know that I'm pretty sure that's what he was doing right before Lost. Either that or it was right after. I can't remember which. But for some reason, I never, like, it seemed like it was X-Files with ghosts, which is also another interesting thing. While I have not watched Haunted, I did watch the first couple of episodes of Evil with Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, and also the villain. One of the villains in it is was another actor from Lost. Why am I forgetting the names of all these either actors or characters? But the guy who's he's also on that TV show Person of Interest, and he is a great evil, creepy, manipulative character. Anyway, so far that show is very good, very creepy. And I'm enjoying that. Point being, yes, you're absolutely right. Haunted looks like it's right up my alley. If I did watch an episode, it was a long time ago, like back when it was originally on the air. So I need to make time to go back and find it. But thank you for bringing it back up in my memory. So Dylan says, along with watching a lot of kayfabe, I've also been watching a lot of videos on Hellboy and Mignola's work. I want so many comics. Well, I'm going to give you a tip. Most of the comics I read these days, including a fair amount of indie comics, are on there. Is I use Hoopla Digital, and Hoopla is similar to Overdrive. It's a digital service that connects with your library. So if you have a public library card, you just create an account, and all you do is you enter your library card, and then there's a PIN number that you probably created when you first signed up. And if not, it gives you, there's things on the site where it'll tell you what your PIN number likely is based on where you signed up. But it allows you, it's kind of like Netflix in that they have digital movies. I mean, they have movies that you can check out, albums you can check out, and ebooks you can check out. And more often than not, I read a lot of comics through the library these days. I haven't gotten very far in it, but I started reading Usagi Yojimbo digitally. Um, they have all of Lone Wolf and Cub, which I probably read the first 50 issues of the first comics print run that came out in like the late 80s, with the one with all the Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz covers. I had those. I found those back issue bin diving when I was a kid, when I was in high school. First started getting into comics, and that one, it's an amazing comic series. But point being is that I'm in an interesting place with actually physically buying and purchasing comics. In that my collection has grown to the point where we don't have room in our house for more books. So it's not that I am pro digital comics or I prefer digital comics. Um, I know there's some people who simply cannot read on a digital device. They don't like it. They hate it. For me, I don't find it an unsatisfactory experience. I can enjoy it. I can read a good book, whether it's digital or a prose book. I can read them on a tablet. But more importantly, I switched to digital because we got to the point where, in order to bring a new physical book into the home, I have to get rid of another physical book. Like the shelves are packed. There's books stacked up all over the place, and we've bought as many bookcases as our house can hold. So I've moved to reading digital expressly for that purpose. And, the fact that reading through the library saves money, but also the libraries still, they have to pay out for those digital books. So there's still money, the creators are being compensated for it. I would say either Hoopla or there's another app called Libby. But Libby is owned by Overdrive. That's their direct app. Hoopla and Libby, I have both. I use both. I read comics on there. I listen to a ton of audiobooks on there, and I highly recommend that, just in terms of like catching up on reading or watching or checking stuff out. All right, I really got to get caught up on it. We're at an hour here, so and I'm glad I found a color that I like for this background, because I feel like, all right, I've done everything. Little known fact, I thought when we started this stream, I was going to finish this and then I was going to flip over to start drawing a new comic book cover. And I had taken all of the reference that I needed and put it into one document, so I could go through here and start moving this around. But yes, I was going to start working on the cover for a new comic book. And then honestly, just start going into making the comic because it's been so long since I've been making comics in front of you guys that I need to get back into that. Although, this is a weird thought that I had had. Right before starting this live stream, I was thinking about the fact that I was going to start drawing this new comic. All right, so I have that Greek mythology book that I've been talking about for years. I'm still not ready. I'm still rewriting parts. I know I'm taking forever with that. So I thought, why don't I take another story that's kind of ready to go, that's looser and not necessarily as needs as much work, and also that I'm not that fussy about. And so I started to sitting down with that story. But right before today's live stream, it occurred to me that I have an old comic book short story that I did ages ago that I still think is a good story, but you can very much see how different it is in comparison to how I draw now. And I thought about maybe so the free sketchbook that I have when people sign up for my newsletter, I thought about maybe instead of doing a free sketchbook to take that comic that is an old comic that I did that isn't, I think, available online anywhere anymore, and redraw that short story and do that as the new free giveaway for signing up for my newsletter, and maybe sharing that process of drawing that here with you guys while I'm working on it. And then when it's ready to go, make that the new newsletter freebie. Send it out to all of the existing newsletter subscribers so they don't have to enter their email address again. And then I don't know. Hopefully by that time I'll be done with the Greek epic and be ready to start. And another lesson, you guys, lesson: don't write epic stories. Just I'm trying to reverse engineer and pull away from graphic novels and really get to writing standalones and short stories and just do shorter pieces so I can get comics out more regularly. Don't do what I do. Stop. No, I'm not Tolkien, and you shouldn't try to be either. At least not till you get some mileage under your belt. Let's see here. Um, Dylan says kitty up, partner. And yeah, kitty up is exactly what I was going to call this piece. In fact, I do intend to add some text underneath that says that. And Byron says, Krita, I absolutely adore it. And says, honestly, it's the most slept on drawing program. I'm willing to give it a shot. It's hard for me in that Procreate works the way like Procreate works with my brain. Everything it does, it's not that I think that Procreate is the best drawing program out there. It's more that everything I want to do, um, it just it works the way that my brain wants to make art. So I've stayed with it because it falls into my workflow really well. There's another um drawing program that I have on here. In fact, let's see here. Art and drawing. What's it called? Oh, Infinite Painter. I have almost never used this, but I listened to Adam Duff's Lucid Pixel. I listened to his I'm subscribed to his live streams. And let me see here. He raved about this being one of the best digital drawing platforms. Let's see here. There's a Proco pencil built in. You know what? Let me see if there's an ink. Let me switch from pencils. Okay, to pens. Let's go to a manga inker. I literally, you're watching me use this, having maybe opened it and drawn in it twice. But I am curious now, like now that we're talking about software and different programs that people have or haven't used, I'm thinking to myself, it's another one that, and it does have a nice brush engine. This gives me a very nice flow. And I haven't come in here and tweaked any of the settings the way that I normally do when I'm working digitally. I've got to play with the brushes to get it to give me something that feels natural or organic to me. Yeah, this is actually pretty nice. So who knows? Maybe I will play with working with this as well instead of Procreate. I mean, it's nice that there are so many good digital drawing options out there. And I remember with Infinite Painter, when I don't know how much it costs right now, but I remember looking at it, it was something like it was 20 bucks at most, but I want to say it was even less than that. Mm, for buying a new digital drawing tool, I'm thinking if I were to go out and buy some new brushes, I would probably spend $20 just on physical brushes. So I feel like going out and purchasing an app that I've never used before and spending 20 bucks on a an art drawing, you know, drawing app, that's pretty reasonable to me. Now, it's got my drawing tools, my smudging tools. I have not bothered to check and see where like a hand tool is to move things around. Huh. Here you go. Gradient, fill, edit shapes. Oh, okay. Wow. It's got perspective tools built in there and everything. Okay, here we go. Just basic transform. I think that it would be this feels like this would be the kind of thing that would be useful to be able to quickly switch. For instance, how do I go back to well, I can just close this. Okay, yeah, all right. That makes wait a minute. Did that move back down? Okay, that's I get it. You have to confirm your controls. See, this is what happened. I go off on a tangent and now I'm like playing with new apps and figure out how to do them. It's like I'm not here to be making tutorials on a program I've never used before. Um, okay, but Byron, good point. Krita slept on. I'll see if they make a tablet version. Dylan loves Meaty Bang. Kings Love Fitness on our Discord server, the Patreon Discord server. He definitely loves Meaty Bang and Krita, and um, uses Affinity Photo. You know what's funny is I've had Affinity Photo for a very long time. I don't use it for drawing at all. But yeah, there's a lot of great options out there. And Byron says Manga Studio is Clip Studio now. Did I call it Manga Studio? I thought I said Clip Studio. But yeah, you're right. It's been Clip Studio for many many years. Let's see here, and thank you, James, in terms of the other piece, the kitty piece, saying the tan looks good. Um, Thank you for that feedback there. And Dylan also says, "Happy autumn equinox." By the way, thank you. Did not realize that this is the autumn equinox already. Although that just reminds me of how quickly the year is going and how much more I had hoped I'd be done with by now. Um, yeah, just the year is always going by, and I wish I was getting more work done. Um, Dylan mentions Ready Comics. I recently looked at their site, and they've changed a few things. They're a bit more expensive now. Plus, you don't get a discount for their ad in your book. And says also there's a minimum of 10 books instead of one plus one or two. Well, I'll tell you that the printer that I use, Greco Printing or Comics Wellspring, I believe that their minimum is 25 copies. What I would probably do is take, maybe Ready Comics, Greco Printing, um, RA Comics Direct, because those are like the three that come off the top of my head, and maybe just compare their price calculator. Sorry, I thought one of my cats was attacking my chair. They do that. Um, let's see here. Point being is that try a couple and just compare the pricing. Now, I will also say that in Ready Comics' defense, the price of materials for many printers went up during the pandemic when there were paper shortages, and unfortunately, prices have eased, but I don't think they're ever going back to pre-pandemic levels, just the actual unit cost for materials. That said, a lot of printers I've seen over the past 5 years, I think the printers that are the smaller mom and pop printers have fought raising their prices as much as possible, but it's like they have to raise prices in order to just stay in business. And we've seen a lot that just couldn't afford it and they've shut their doors. So before you judge Ready Comics too harshly, compare them with other similar sized comic book printers and places that are doing print on demand, and just see, because I think you'll find that for a lot of them, yeah, all of them have raised their prices to some degree, and it's just a unfortunate cost of doing business. And it's even trickled down to like the indie level at convention tables and people running Kickstarter campaigns where the prices for their individual books have to go up because those higher printing costs means a higher retail cost. And it's not like we want to pass those price increases on to readers. It's that we can't afford to make things at those prices anymore. So that's just an unfortunate economic reality in the modern day. And I still don't know how to parse that, because I still think, like, the fact that people are mad that comics, the standard price for an issue is like $5 now, when I can remember when comics went from 75 cents to $1 and people were saying the industry is over. This is the end. Yeah, I mean, prices have just continually crept up over the years, and they continue to creep up. And it competes with the fact that comics are supposed to be an impulse buy. That's when I think the readership was the largest, when it was something that just on your way out of the cash register, you saw it there. It was there for $1 or $2. And you'd be like, all right, let's grab one of these on the way. Parents would just buy a copy of Archie for their kids, or a Spider-Man or a Batman comic. Like, here, we went grocery shopping, you want this. Now it's like when you got a comic book that's costing as much as a gallon of milk, people are like, and milk is expensive. Milk costs more than gasoline. All right, enough on the economy. Let's see here. So Timon asks, Jeremy, are you from California? Yes. Do you feel like the resources to be a comic book artist are in your favor in your state? Because I'm from Michigan and we don't have any programs in my city. And he says, maybe I'm just the complainer here. Haha. Well, you know what though? I'll tell you this. In terms of resources, educational resources, printers, comic shops, I'm not in the LA area anymore. But when I was, I will tell you that there is a plethora of amazing comic book shops. There are so many great. There really are because LA has so many entertainment based businesses. You have studios that hire concept artists. You have animation studios there, video game studios. I remember driving past. I used to drive past Riot Games offices on my way to work every day. And sometimes thinking to myself, wow, if I worked here, I'd be at work by now, which is a thing you would never actually imagine yourself saying. But, point being is, well, actually, screw that. The place where I used to work shared a business park with Activision. So Activision eventually moved, but for a while there, I would also be like going for walks in the afternoon. I'd walk past it, and every once in a while I'd be thinking, just dreaming, I think I've never really pursued work in video games only because I do not actually spend a lot of time playing games. And I feel like games are one of those industries where it really benefits somebody to be immersed in the culture of the game consumer, and actually somebody who plays games regularly in order to better design for them. Now, that might just be a personal misconception. I don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time talking to people that work in games, but that's sort of my outside perception. That could just be negative self-talk. I don't know. But that's all to say that there are so many educational resources and schools that teach concept art out here, out in the LA area. even at the animation guild where I took regular figure drawing classes, there's an amazing artist who teaches. Will Weston teaches at Art Center. I think he also teaches his own independent classes now, but he's taught at a lot of great institutions. He's been a layout artist and prop designer and viz dev artist for Nickelodeon and for tons of animation productions for many years, and also a very cool guy. And you've heard me mention Carl Ganas multiple times. I mean, he is like a industry within the animation world. Like he's like one of the best teachers of the fundamentals of drawing that's in the animation industry. He teaches at all the major studios to this day. He's been a great storyboard artist. In fact, if you look for his name in my channel, I actually was fortunate to get him to sit down for a long interview, and we just talked for an hour about his career and his process, and what he wants to convey to students. And I mean, I feel like I've been very, very fortunate to study with him for so many years, and you can see how much he loves teaching and he loves the process. And I think the I've told him to his face that the greatest gift he ever gave me was a hunger for the learning of draftsmanship. Because before I was taking figure drawing classes just so I could make better comics. But now I've fallen so in love with the process of just analyzing the human form and studying and improving and growing. And that's something I didn't have before I studied with him. So my point is that, yes, there are a lot of resources in California. However, there are also a lot of resources online that are available. For instance, I have a subscription to Schoolism. Bobby Chu, the founder of Lightbox, co-founder of Lightbox Expo, he is, aside from being a great artist himself and an art educator, he and co-starting that a great art festival, animation entertainment industry, grounded visual art festival with great business connections and opportunities. He started Schoolism, which, similar to Proco, it's an online platform, but it's got a very diverse catalog of art courses you can take. And it's kind of like Netflix, where once you sign up, you're not buying by the course. You sign up for the platform and you can take whatever you want to take. And I've been slowly kind of working through a course here, a course there, but there's so many great courses on storyboarding, color, visual development, fundamentals, gesture, environment, concept art, like literally anything about picture making and narrative storytelling. There's a course on it. And, I mean, there's a course I took that was taught by Craig Mullins, who's one of the great like Star Wars and film concept artists. And there's a couple of courses that Nathan Fowkes teaches that I want to go through because I really enjoy. I mean, hell, I've got his book on charcoal portrait drawing, but I got to meet him briefly at Lightbox Expo, and he's just one of those guys who, another thoughtful, creative, passionate teacher and artist. I would say take advantage of a lot of those online communities. And I will tell you there's a Discord server for Lightbox Expo, and there's a lot of educational material on there that isn't necessarily things you have to sign up for Schoolism to be a part of or sign up for Lightbox Expo. Like the server is free to get onto, and there's a lot of community on there. There are resources out there. So I think your complaint is valid. That said, it's worth looking. There are some resources you can find. And I will say it's a shame. There's a great teaching comic artist named Jersey Droz, and he moved to Columbus, but he used to be in Michigan. And he had a comic festival that he would run up there for many years. And he would have library workshops and teaching up there. In fact, he'd probably be somebody who it would be worth, I don't know if he's on Twitter, but whatever social medias he's on, messaging him and asking if he's got good recommendations for educational material that's still in Michigan. So, point being is that yes, it LA and New York tend to be places that are kind of entertainment and concept art hubs, but it's still worthwhile to look out and see and find some opportunities that are near you. And also maybe it's worth even considering, a road trip, like finding an event that you want to go to. Like, I mean, for me, San Diego Comic Con, I haven't gone in many years, but that's a big event that people will make it a point to travel for vacation. And pardon me, I have to blow my nose. I'm gonna mute for a minute. All right. For instance, on the East Coast, I mean, obviously, Atlanta is very far from Michigan, but Atlanta has Dragon Con. Um, New York Comic Con, I would say, considering how I've never gone to New York Comic Con, but people, definitely say it's as big, if not getting bigger than San Diego Comic Con. And I don't know if I could, in good conscience, considering the fact that it's not that I dislike San Diego Comic Con, it's simply that it is so big that it's kind of a hassle to get to. It's still a great show. I would never say it's a bad show. It's a wonderful show. But I would say for, also a show like New York Comic Con is on that level where it's so packed and so intense, and it might be a bit much for you. But maybe looking at smaller shows, I'm sure there's got to be at least one big comic show in Michigan, and maybe it's something where it's like a day trip for you to go to, or maybe it's something where you drive to, and if it's not something where you could drive back and forth in one day and go the whole convention, maybe it's something where you plan save up and make it like a mini vacation where you get a cheap hotel or split a hotel with a couple of other art buddies, and you decide to do the show for 2 or 3 days that way. And also, never let it be said that there's not power in, because never let it be said there isn't power in creating your own art communities. I haven't used meetup.com in a while, but starting a Facebook group, starting a meetup group, and simply reaching out saying, hey, I am an indie comic creator. I'm looking for people in this zip code or in the surrounding area for a meetup, and just seeing if you can get a couple of people to meet up with you at a coffee shop and hang out and draw. And the thing you will find is whenever you get comic creators, like when we sit here and we talk doing these live streams, I learn stuff from you guys. You know, anytime you get a group of creative people sitting and hanging out and chatting, you learn stuff. Somebody brings up something, somebody passes on a resource or recommends a movie or an art tool or an education resource that you might say, huh, I've discovered something new. I'm gonna go. This might change my whole course of what I was planning to do. So reaching out and finding just local creators, honestly, even just going to your a local comic shop, and or even if it's a hike to get to one, but reaching out and finding out if they've got a message board, if they've got a group of creators that hang out or meet up, or asking the shop if they'd be willing to have a comic creators meetup there like one night a month. Sometimes if you don't have the resources you need, you have to create them. So yes, California does have a lot of resources and it's kind of unfair. But if you're in an area where you don't have as many resources, there's finding things that are worth traveling to, there's finding online resources, and there is creating your own if you don't have what you need. Let's see here. All right. Long ass rant. Let's see here. Wow, I'm a half hour behind. I'm looking at this. So James had mentioned, no, Meteor Men is about a teenager who discovers a connection with an alien. And Dylan says that is interesting. I'll have to check that out. Oh, and I see Wolvie Draws is in the chat. Hey Wolvie, welcome. Sorry it's taking me so long to get to your comment. Um, Hang on. I'm gonna go up here and I'm going to star that comment from Timon. I don't know what starring does. I'm just going to do it because I want to see. Let's see here. Dylan says, I have a tech addiction, so I prefer physical. I guess when I was talking about moving on to digital materials, um, yeah, or no, reading comics digitally. No, I get that. Like I said, for me, the moving to digital was I either had to stop reading comics, get rid of comics that I currently have to get more, or start reading digital. And I don't want to get rid of the comics I have because the ones I have I really love. I don't want to stop reading anything, even though I have to fight to find any time to read it all. But let's see here. Katie says, completely random. Great comic recommendation I can give you is Humanity Lost. Says it's up on the creator's Patreon. It's only $1.50 a month. I will write that down. Humanity Lost. And they said it's about an evil AI that mutates all of humanity for the purpose of colonizing other planets. And then Dylan says, "See, this is why I love indie stuff. We can rework our older, crappy stuff." Well, you know what I mean. I'm only saying this because I'm a contrarian, but I think that you look at Batman, and how many times has Batman's origin story been told? You know, you look at Superman, how many times his origin story has been told? Wolverine, I don't really feel like they needed an origin earlier. And this is no shade on Joe Quesada because I think that his artwork is great. I forget who wrote Wolverine Origins, but for me, the only origin that Wolverine needs is Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X. I feel like everything prior to the Weapon X program should just have stayed a mystery, and we just never know. That is personal. I'm sure that some people feel differently, or some people don't care one way or the other. But my point being is that even with superhero comics, they definitely do go back and they rework and retell stories. They'll go back and retell. I mean, hell, the whole Ultimate line is going back and retelling new versions of the Marvel characters. And I don't know if the DC Absolute Universe and the All In, I don't know if that's exactly the same thing or whether it's an alternate universe, but it still feels like they're going back and just retelling different versions of earlier stories. Let's give Wolvie Draws a quick shout out. Wolvie says, I'm doing a comic stream tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know if I'll be able to get online for that, but I will definitely look for you. In fact, let me just make a note so I can go back and subscribe to your channel so I can check out your stuff. If I'm not able to make it on there live, I'll at least catch your replay and check out a little bit of what you do. Let's see here. And Byron says, in all honesty, if you have something that works for you, then you shouldn't be worried about trying out new things. Yeah, you know what you are? You are very 110% right about that, Byron. It's a facet of the shiny object syndrome, that FOMO, that fear of missing out. Whenever you see somebody else using a tool, you're like, ooh, how does that work? Is that better than what I have? And it's just that constant sense of envy and chasing and wanting to try and see more and do more. But as I'm sitting here sketching, I'm wondering, nah, that doesn't matter. Um, let's see here. I feel like I'm getting close to getting caught up. Katie says one of the this is the comic The Humanity Lost. Said one of the leaders under the influence of the AI breaks free, starts a revolution. There's also one last unaltered human remaining. He's the key to convincing others to join the resistance. You know, Dylan mentioned that sounds interesting. All right. And Byron says, I know that feeling, Jeremy. The amount of times I've said this year I'm going to do so much is more than I care to admit. But at the same time, we usually get more done than we think. Yeah, one thing that I do stick to is I tell other people, and I have to tell myself this, is not to beat myself up so much. We can only do what we can do. And, I know that I have accomplished things this year. It's just, a matter of continuing to put one foot in front of the other. Um, I'd say that this particular year has been a year of transitions and changes for me. And I think that's going to continue into next year. And it's hard to make comics specifically because it's such a labor intensive process when you don't have everything else in your life on track and on schedule, so that you can say, all right, no matter what, come hell or high water, I'm going to get to work on this for an hour a day or 2 hours a day. Whereas now I'm at the point where sometimes a whole week goes by and I don't get to draw at all. And I don't even get necessarily time to write or work on anything other than just, updating the Patreon. Speaking of which, I always wait till the end to say this. Tomorrow, Monday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have the Patreon exclusive live stream, the Art Book Study Group session. So just for everyone who's a patron, just to let you know, we'll be live tomorrow at 8 p.m. And if you can't make it, the live stream replay will be available the following day. So you guys will be able to check that out. Just giving you guys a heads up on that. Okay. And as soon as I get caught up with all of the comments, we'll wrap up this stream. I think I'm getting close now. I'm looking at the timestamps for the comics, and I'm getting closer to the current time. So we're getting closer here. Dylan says on Ready Comics, a manga 40-page square bound is $9.40, when a black and white 200-page manga costs the same thing. But I get the pandemic affected everything. So, well, you know what? Here's the thing. It might cost $10 retail for a manga book. Let's say something from Tokyo Pop or Viz Comics. A retail manga will usually be about $10. But you have to remember that they are printing these books 5,000, 10,000, probably 10,000 at a time, 10 to 20,000 at a time. And when you're printing at such volume, that's how the price of books gets really, really cheap. That's when you have places where a company is paying like less than $1 per book, not per issue, but for like a whole book. The thing that you need to look at is that it is very, very hard for independent creators to make a living doing their art. But most of the time when you're at a convention and you're at a convention table, or if you're just dealing with people online, people tend to understand that when you are buying something directly from an indie creator, you're paying for something you're not getting from Marvel. You're getting a unique and very personalized voice. You're buying something from this individual as opposed to a corporate product. So if you're buying a $40 comic, a 40-page comic, and let's say you're retailing that comic for $20 instead of 10, which is which I think that's reasonable, That's something where a lot of times, yeah, it's pricey, but people look at it like they're buying an art object. It's like buying a print from an individual artist. So I think that it's worth, trying, just look at that book. The whole important thing is figuring out what do you need in order to be profitable, and then how much are people willing to pay. And I don't say how much they're willing to pay in terms of you're gouging them, but just simply it's more about what is the base, because you could say, oh, I'm going to try and sell a single issue for $50. Well, there's very few people that are going to buy an indie comic for $50. They might buy it if it comes in a gift pack where it's a $50 comic plus a individual sketch plus a print or a set of mini prints, something like that. Now we're getting into like Kickstarter numbers. But you may look at it and say, all right, in order to sell this comic book by itself, the retail price would need to be $20 because you're paying, you know, you would probably have to sell $20 plus shipping, because if you're selling it if the printing cost is $9.40, basically you just round it up and say, all right, your printing costs are $10. Um, plus you have to pay to ship it to the person who buys it, which is probably gonna be another $5. So you might be looking at $25 for that indie comic. You might want to, well, that's the thing. If you got a set of, what was it you said? Like Ready Comics now has a minimum of 10 issues. So if you get 10 issues at $10 each, you're paying $100 there. So that's coming out of pocket. But if you get 100 of them, I mean, if you get 10 books, you come out of pocket for that $100, and then you were able to sell 4 of them at 25, you've broken even. The other 6 are now all profit. Now, you can also do things where, let's say that you have a hard time selling those break even copies to people. And by the way, what I'm telling you right there, that first 4 that you sell at 25, that's the Kickstarter model. You're selling enough in your campaign to pay for your print run, and then all of the other ones that you sell on your own at conventions and through your website, that's where all the profit is. That's literally what Kickstarter does. And mind you, this is from someone who has never run a Kickstarter campaign. But I mentioned Tyler James earlier. I listened to the Comic Launch podcast. I've actually signed up for his program, and I just haven't had time to go through the Comic Launch Pro course. But I absolutely believe in what he teaches there. I've listened to enough interviews to see that the results work. It's just a matter of making time to do that for myself. But what I will say is, you can take that, as long as you know that your unit cost was $10, you might decide to, let's say you're at a convention, or maybe you decide to run a sale, and you're like, all right, for this weekend, I'm going to sell them at, you're going to sell your book. You say it's normally $20, it's normally $25, and now you're going to sell it for, you might sell it for $5 off, which is a pretty big discount. That's 20% off. So basically, if you sell it for that amount, then you might be able to move a couple more books that you weren't selling. You just do it for one weekend. So it's not something where the people who paid full price are feeling screwed. It's a sale. Maybe it's like 4th of July sale. Maybe it's a Halloween sale, whatever your comic is. You can sell that, move a few more units. Maybe you blow through the other 6 comics, and then you have money to order more. And this time you're using the profit that you made from the other ones to order instead of coming out of pocket. So you see how you pour the profits back into the business, and that's slowly how you do it. Let's see here. But anyway, that's just a starting point for a way to think about it, because you really kind of have to just decide to dive in and try and sell stuff and see what works and what doesn't. Dylan also says, I have a Skillshare account that I haven't used yet that's still free, and I've been thinking about using now. If I ever get into conventions, I'm only staying in Arizona because going out of state or out of country would cause too much anxiety. I think it's crazy to go out of state or out of country. Oh yeah, I saw that event that they talked about. He says that's why I was super excited for the Artcasters episode about the new small con here in Arizona. I watched that episode where they did the reviews of it, and were showing their table setups. And yeah, it looked like a great show. It was nice and intimate, and both Gary and Scott said that they made back, they made back what they put in. The tables were very, very affordable, and that the show had free entry, was free for the public to enter. So, I hope you were able to go to that show. In terms of going out of state or out of country, one year in my my comic creating career, I decided I wanted to try to do one convention per month. And while there are a lot of shows in California, if you're going to do one a month, you got to go out of state. And I think the biggest show I did out of state was Chicago Comic-Con, and I lost money on that show because one, my sales were lower than they were in California shows, and then two, I airfare plus hotel plus plus food plus shipping. Well, not really shipping because well, no, actually that's not true. We tried something where I was traveling with a buddy of mine and we shipped a bunch of stuff ahead of time to somebody who was going to bring the books to us. Um, Problem was, well, first off, at the time I was selling candles, which are very heavy to ship. I mean, I had candles with stickers on them that had my artwork because I kind of thought, you know, it seemed like it might appeal to my audience. I think I maybe sold one in like 3 years of bringing them to shows. And really, you need to give something like maybe 1 year of conventions. And then if it doesn't go, it's like, nah, that's not working. Point is I spent a year traveling and I think I did probably 3 shows in California. I did Phoenix Comic Con, and I haven't been back to Phoenix in a few years. I actually, it's a great show, but I for a while Phoenix Comic Con was my. This was before. I don't know if that's the show that is now Phoenix Fan Fusion, but there was a time when Phoenix Comic Con was my highest performing show in terms of sales, and there was like 2 years in a row where I did really really well there. And then it just started going down and down and down. And then it got to the point where I just was not making enough to make it worthwhile, and they were still raising the cost of tables, so I finally had to let that show go. But I did some shows in Las Vegas, Nevada. I did Chicago Comic Con. I did a show in New Orleans, show in St. Louis, a few other places. Flew around a bit, and I found, kind of similar to you, staying in state was where I did my best, with the exception of Las Vegas. Las Vegas also did pretty well for me, but even that eventually I had to stop doing because I was having diminishing returns. That comes back to making new comics, because I honestly feel like the reason why I was having diminishing returns is because the people who liked my work would come back the next year to see me, and I didn't have enough new stuff to make it worth their while. If I had something new, they'd be like, oh, well, I'll pick this up, or I don't have this print, I'll get this. But even though, every convention you're going to be exposed to a bunch of new people, I've done fewer and fewer shows because I've been doing less and less comics. And I really want to get back to producing more work more regularly, and get that stuff out there so that anytime someone comes to my table, that there's a lot of new stuff for them to be excited about. Let's see here. Dylan says, I would love to be part of that small con to do it being so small. I'm an introvert and have social anxiety, so small is best for me to start out with. I will tell you that I'm an introvert too. And it seems really weird probably to you to hear me talking with a bunch of people online and chatting and live streaming in public when I'm an introvert. What I will say, there's 2 things that I can tell you that may be helpful to you, maybe not. But the first thing is, the more you do anything, no matter how uncomfortable it is, the more you get used to it. So, like when I first started live streaming, it was very, very uncomfortable. When I first started posting videos online, it was very uncomfortable for me. But the reason why I was able to post videos online is because I had gotten used to doing conventions and talking to people in person. That once you've sat at a convention table and actually had to tell someone what your comic's about in person, once you've done that a bunch of times, the idea of sitting in front of a camera and talking to people becomes like nothing. The sitting there in person and talking to, first off, I mean, a lot of times in early conventions, even now, but just getting someone to stop at your table to even talk to them is both difficult and terrifying, because your heart gets broken with every person that just walks by your table and doesn't stop. But at the same time, you're afraid that they are going to stop, because then if they do stop, you're like, oh shit, now I have to talk to you. And then you have to tell them about your book, and then you have to look them in the face as they say, all right, no thanks, and walk away and deal with that rejection and feel crushed, and then let that person go. And then you have to do the cycle again. But you do that a bunch of times, and eventually it's almost like the person at Costco that's giving out the free hot dog weenie samples. It's like you're just there and you're just like, hi, feel like checking out my comic? Hi, feel like checking out my comic? And eventually they do check it out. And then you say, oh, it's about this, it's about that. What are you into? What do you like reading? Then you have a short exchange. And I almost feel like I've said this many, many times on my stream. The way that I got over selling feeling icky is that I don't think of it as selling. I feel like it's show and tell. I literally think of it as, when we're kids, we bring our favorite toy to class and we get to stand up in front of class and tell them, this is this thing I have. I love it. It's awesome. You get to tell them why you love it. That's how I feel about my comics. So I just feel like a convention is just a big thing of show and tell. The other thing I will say about being an introvert and having anxiety, what makes it possible for me to sit here and talk to you guys right now and not be having a full-blown panic attack is that I am aware that I have an inner monologue. And I think a lot of us have that thing where we're constantly having either imaginary conversations in our head, or we're having conversations with ourselves as we think through things, or we're imagining talking to other people. And what allows me to talk to you guys is that this sounds completely nuts, but I treat you guys as you guys are part of those voices in my head. It's almost like I'm taking the inside of my head and turning it inside out and saying, all right, instead of just having the inner monologue here, like, Dylan, if you bring up having anxiety and not wanting to have at table, I almost feel like that's a voice. I almost imagine like you're a voice in my head that says, I have anxiety. I don't want to go out of state. I want to do small shows. And when I'm talking to you now, it's like I'm responding to a thought that I had. So I'm treating all of you guys like you're an extension of my thought process. And I know that that sounds like a really weird, woo-woo, kind of nutty way to treat it. But then it takes the anxiety away of talking to strangers or being on stage or having a bunch of people looking at me. And it's not about me being an expert on anything or having like wisdom to share, or what if I'm an idiot? What if I'm wrong? What if I have no business telling you any of that? And it's just me talking out the same thoughts that I would have inside of my head, but I'm having them outside of my head aloud with you guys. And it's a weird thing to wrap your head around, but from one introvert to another, I really feel like changing my thinking about what it means to communicate with people and really just saying, okay, all of this stuff is going on inside my head anyway. Just within reason, just releasing it, letting the internal become external. If you want to look at it in a kind of a beautiful, kind of spiritual, hopeful way, it's trying to melt the boundary between you and me. For all of us here that are talking, I mean, we're all brought together because we love comics and we love art. And we're sitting here and we're talking about that and the things that we're interested in, books we're reading, we're sharing these things with each other. But being a creative person feels very, very isolating, even though at the same time, anytime a creative sits down with another creative, we immediately start talking about process. And even if we have completely different processes, or we're interested in completely different things, or like one person loves to outline, one person hates outlining, just the fact that we make stuff and we love talking about how we make stuff and why we make stuff and what is the stuff we like making, we're immediately bonded by that. And the idea that in a world, if everyone could somehow just dissolve those mental and emotional barriers between each other, it's like we'd be like, no one has any reason to have war or crime or violence. Robbing from you is like robbing from me. Hurting you is like hurting myself. Yeah, super woo-woo, but I mean, if there's one way in which I'm an optimist, that's it. That trying to use art and conversation and communication with each other as a way to dissolve the barriers between us. So, wow, I've gone so long that I'm chasing I'm chasing folks out of the stream because I've been going on for so long. Byron says, Oh, I didn't know if you were saying that. You said got to pedal the comics like NYC homeboys pedal their mixtapes. I thought you were saying like you got to pedal like you got to bounce, but that's Wolvie saying that they got to go. So Wolvie draws, um, says, appreciate you, got to go, peace. Peace to you, Wolvie. You're probably already gone, but thank you, man. It's good to see you. All right. All right. But yeah, Byron is very true. Not having done the New York show, but having done San Diego, WonderCon is kind of my regular show, and you definitely having to be out there and getting stuff in front of people. It's it can be tough, but at a certain point, I honestly it feels like an in-person version of what we're doing here. That's what it is. Like if all of you guys were just coming by, if you guys were attending a comic convention, you guys just came by one by one, had a chance to hang out and talk. My wife has done conventions with me where she'll help, she'll run the booth, she'll sell books when I have to go step away for anything, and she'll talk with people when there's multiple people at the table. She's great about that. She has told me 100 times, she'll turn over and say, stop talking and start selling. Because I get so caught up in talking about writing and craft and what people are into that I mean, honestly, my usual thing when I'm at a convention, when I'm manning a table, is I will tell people right when they get there, this is what I make, this is why I love it, this is how much it is, please take a look. And once I try to get that out of the way in the first 60 seconds of someone being at my table. And if they haven't left after hearing the pitch, then I'm like, okay, you know what it is. Now let's talk, let's hang out. And we do what we're doing here. And if they decide they want to get it, great. I've given them the pitch. I've told them what it's about. If it sounds interesting, they will pick it up. But more often than not, I am a lot more interested in like connecting with it. That's the strange thing. I'm really much more interested, I think, in connecting with other people than I am with making a sale. And that's another counterintuitive thing. You would think as an introvert that I would not be so interested in connecting. But I think the other thing about being an introvert is that I get peace by being left alone, but I still feel that sense of isolation. And I think that a comic convention is a place to get that connection from people. Because I'll tell you this, Dylan, I mean, you're an introvert, but you're here online chatting with strangers. I think to some degree you also feel that desire for connection that I feel, and I think the rest of us that are here feel too. So I think that this isn't something that happened to me instantly. This is like years of life experience, years of doing conventions and making art that led me to this worldview. So I'm not saying that you can just instantly shift and feel differently. But I think if you let these ideas kind of play around with your idea and maybe see about working them into your life in baby steps, you may find that there's things about being an introvert that will actually drive you to want to connect with people more in different ways, in ways that are comfortable for you, that either don't raise your anxiety but raise it within tolerable levels, and maybe even challenge you to grow, to develop a new level of comfort with anxiety. Because I will tell you that, being at conventions, my wife will say that I always get really cranky leading up to conventions because it is anxiety inducing and it's stressful. But once I'm there, I'm like I'm as happy as a clam. So let's see here. All right, let me get to the last couple of comments here. We've been going for almost 2 hours now, so I'm making up for the time that the couple of episodes we missed. Dylan says Fan Fusion is the new name for the Phoenix Fan Fusion is the new name for the Phoenix Comic Con. I wonder why they changed it. My understanding is that it was purchased by a different company, but I don't know the details. So Dylan says, I would prefer to sell comics at cons, but made peace with also selling sticker sheets, notepads, trading cards, and postcards. You say you've made your peace with it. To be honest, I think it's very, very smart to have a more diversified set of items because the number of people that actually read comics is very small. If you can make items that people actually use, people put stickers on their laptops and on books and on things, just anything they want to mark up. If they have a cool piece of art they can slap on it, people love stickers. People love trading cards. They love putting postcards on things. And, if you can put your artwork on merch, quote unquote, just putting your work on things that people will use, I think that's probably a lot better, use. And then let the money that you make from that help subsidize the making and production and the selling of the comics. Um, yeah, Dylan says so many thoughts and emotional ups and downs, but also, they miss show and tell. So you miss show and tell. Let's see here. And Dylan says, I'm a voice in someone's head. Ah! Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird way to think about it, but I mean, in a certain way, the way that we all interact with social media and the way we go around with our faces buried in our phones, or even when we're talking to people, not necessarily being 100% present, it's kind of like we already do treat people and walk through life with that. They're just a virtual thing that's existing in us. And to go back to the woo woo, the idea of us being more connected versus less connected, I feel like inviting people into my skull is a way of trying to be more connected. So let's see here. All right. Last couple of comments here. We're pretty much at the end. Wolvie had to take off. Dylan says art is pretty woo-woo to be fair. Agreed. Very much so. And he says, I'm just glad that my best friend had a con experience so I can get her opinion, has con experience so I can get her opinions. You should see if you can split a table with her at a show sometime. And actually, this is another thing. Maybe just your friend who has con experience, the next time she does a show, ask her if she needs someone to help out. Because she could probably, well, I don't know. It's not a matter of, you don't want to pressure your friend. But if they can get an extra badge for you, if you were to work for them as an assistant at the shows, that way they can take bathroom breaks, get food, do whatever. Maybe work the show with her and see what it feels like to be behind the table without the pressure of selling your own work. That's something a lot of people do, is helping out at a table before they're doing it on their own. And then eventually, instead of having to do a table all by yourself, splitting a table. Probably for the first year I did conventions, I was splitting tables with people. And then eventually I had too much crap and I had to just only do my own tables. And now I'm at the time where I kind of want to have one table for my comic stuff and then one table for figure drawing stuff. So I want to start selling like figure drawing originals. Let's see here. Point being is it's a good thing to start. And okay, yeah, it's good to hear. Dylan says, yeah, I do feel that desire for community and connection. I think that comes with being an introvert because the same thing that makes us pull away from people, as we're doing that, I know that there's a pull. I mean, human beings, introvert or not, we all do feel a desire for connection. It's just that a lot of times it sounds spoiled to say it, but I think most of us, at least for myself, it's like I want connection, but I want it on my terms. I want it when I feel like having it. And in a way, having a scheduled time to show up once a week is the thing where it's like, all right, I'm going to show up. They're going to show up. We're going to connect. But then when it's over, I can walk away from it and go be a hermit or just go for a hike with my wife or just play with my cats. It's kind of like we want that, but we want to have it in a way that we can control. It doesn't feel things that are out of our control. For me, that's what raises my anxiety. Things that feel like doing things that are challenging, but doing them in a way where I have some element of control, that actually feels adventurous to me. And adventure is just the positive side of the anxiety coin. So, that's another way to look at it. And that's the way I choose to look at it. And Katie Cat says, "Will you check out Humanity Lost?" And, says it's by Callum Diggle. I'll definitely hop over to their website and take a look. So thank you again for the recommendation. Okay. So last couple of comments here, and we're just about out. So again, if you guys are on here, hit that like button. If you have other friends that are into comics and creative conversations and the art process, please share it with them. Help me get the word out. So hit that like button, hit that share button. If you're subscribed and you don't necessarily get the live streams and notifications, hit that bell notification thing so you'll know when I go live. So Dylan says, and I see that thumbs up right there. Thank you. Dylan says, for me, I just want to sell comics, but I understand that would look a little weird if I was just them, plus those items have become popular. Those items have become popular over the past few years. I would say test that assumption out. It's an assumption, but I mean, I go to a lot of conventions. Well, not a lot, but when I do go to conventions, I definitely see people who just sell stickers, keychains, mini prints, maybe some original art and commissions. And I think that having a table where you have a lot of other merch and you have a book, I don't think that that's something where someone would look at that and think that it's weird. They would just look at it as it's another one of your offerings. I mean, for me, the way that my convention table is set up, it's 50% books and then it's 50% prints and original art. But I think that having those other items there, oh yeah, as a matter of fact, you said I'm actually more open for trading cards since I love those. I think that all of the stuff that you make, here's the thing. All of us have a narrative in our head of what we think people will like and won't like. And to a certain degree, there's some things that we're correct about, there's some things we're wrong about. And I think what you kind of have to do is if you haven't done conventions before or you haven't done a lot of conventions, you kind of need to bring all the things you want to sell and try them out and see how they do. And some things will sell well and some things don't. And then from there, you kind of shift and try different things. And you try, like every time I do a convention, every single show, I take a photograph of my table setup, like where I have items laid out on the table, because I'm constantly tweaking them and I'm trying different things, moving different things out around, or I'm saying, oh, these items didn't sell. I mean, and for a while, for the longest time, I did not sell any art prints at all. And then I switched from 8.5 by 11 prints to 11 by 17 prints, and then my prints started to sell. And then I started tweaking the pricing, and the prices, I was able to raise them a little bit, and I tried different pricing, and then I found a pricing where I think the prints were 15 each or 2 for 20, and that seemed to be a price that really got people, like that was a really good deal for people. I raised the prices because my prints were costing me more to get, but it seemed like a lot of people were not necessarily as interested in the higher priced prints. So I've had to go back and forth and adjust the prints, tweak them. I have larger prints available at different sizes. The prints cost more on my web store. So when people buy at conventions, they're getting a discount because they came out to see me in person. My point is that for all of these things, if you want to try trading cards, try them. And maybe you do multiple shows and you try them at different price points, see what people will buy. Or maybe it's something where instead of giving someone a cheaper price for your trading cards, maybe what you do is you say, all right, if you buy 2 trading cards, you get a third one free or at a discount. These are all things that you won't know until you do a show and then experiment at the show and try things out. And Dylan says, I thought about asking her, Dylan's friend, about splitting at cons in the future. And that is absolutely something. Yeah. See, you know what? You already know what you're doing. It's just a matter of moving into them. Let's see here. Um, and Dylan agrees. Yeah, it's on my terms that when I want that connection. So yeah, we're definitely on the same place there. And Katie has to take. Well, I'm taking off, but Katie's also wrapping up and said, "Anytime. Sorry, I didn't get to see if you saw my recommendation and synopsis. By the way, I'm popping in and out of the stream. Yeah, I saw the synopsis, and thank you again for that. I will check that out. And you are welcome for the stream. I am glad you found it fabulous. I'm glad we got to hang out. Um, and Dylan says, I accept that challenge of challenging my assumptions. You know what? Okay, see, that's awesome. That is a great attitude to have. I'm glad to hear it. And I hope you get to have a really great experience at a convention sometime soon. Dylan says, I love the concept of creating postcards as mini posters. Yeah, that is a great idea. Mini prints are a nice, inexpensive item to have for sale at shows. So definitely check that out. And Katie is going to dip and says, bye-bye, everyone. I hope your Comic-Con journey goes splendidly to Dylan. And Dylan says, bye and thank you. And guys, all right, we made it. I finally got after a whole extra hour of just me jawing here. Thank you so much for joining us. As I have said, Amar's here. We had a lot to catch up on. He's like still online streaming. We're wrapping up here at the end. You came right for the tail. But tomorrow, Art Book Study Group, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be doing that. So everyone, if you're interested in becoming a Patreon subscriber, you can join for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Subscription will also give you access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share artwork, works in progress, give each other encouragement, feedback, share tips and tricks. Just an ongoing conversation throughout the week in between live streams. And then, as I said, twice a month, we do a Patreon exclusive live stream. I call it Art Book Study Group. It's where we do a deep dive in some of the best art books around, try to suck out all of the knowledge we can. And we're getting close to the end of a long-running series we've been doing on a book called The Figure by Walt Reed. And I think it's one of the best books on drawing fundamentals. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts delivered right to your inbox about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Or you can pick up my most recent series, Morningstar. It is a retelling of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven as a Western. So it's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, script excerpts. I show you how I use photo reference in the book. I basically show you everything I did and how I create comics. Just more of what I like to share with you guys here online. So please definitely go to amazon.jeremy.net, check that out. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, there are book flip through videos. You can check out what's inside the books before you buy. All right, guys. Again, thank you so much. It's good to be back with you. Great to hang out, to chat. I see Mikey Myers slid into the chat. He says, "I'm Jesus, by the way. Who wants my bagel?" You know what? I already had breakfast. My wife made some French toast. Otherwise, I'd be down for the bagels. Good to see you. Thank you for popping in. I'm sorry you're catching us at the tail end for the stream, but we'll be back here next week, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, guys. Thanks so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.